What's going on, guys? Farah Hanoun here, aka UFC News Alerts, and I'm here to give a reaction video on the press conference that just took place between Jon Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Chris Cyborg, and Amanda Nunes for UFC 232, which of course takes place now in Inglewood, California at the Forum. It was previously Las Vegas. There's been a lot of drama. It is a stacked card, but unfortunately we're left to only be talking about everything that's gone down with Jon Jones, of course, with USADA finding a picogram. He was calling it a pictogram, which was really funny. The press conference said picogram. The steroid that he popped for back in the summer when he fought Daniel Cormier of July of 2017. Served his time. Obviously, he's had a lot of problems with USADA, and all of a sudden, this comes up a couple of days before, and it's all everybody's been talking about. I wanted to do this video right after the press conference because I knew that this was going to come up in the press conference and everybody was going to talk about it. And of course, right off the bat, the first thing we talk about is USADA and everybody looking at them and saying, how do you give Jon Jones a pass? We've seen it in the past with Frank Mir. We've seen it with Tom Lawler. Even Tim Means has come up and said, with him that he had a 2-year suspension initially. It was reduced to 6 months when they found out. But the point was he wasn't given the benefit of the doubt. And it was also because of a picogram. All these guys, it was the same case. It was because of a picogram or a very, very small microscopic steroid that popped up in their system. And of course, with Jon Jones, they're talking about how he couldn't have possibly injected something that the experts, that's the question everybody's been asking. Ariel just asked it. How do we know that it's been in his system all along? And everybody keeps referring to the experts and Jeff Nowitzki of USADA. So that's kind of been the big question, is why give the leeway to Jon Jones? Why does Jon Jones get the pass? Why does UFC 232 move from Las Vegas to Inglewood, California in such short notice? All the fans that have spent thousands of dollars on tickets and hotel accommodation, media members, the fighters themselves that now have to pay California taxes as opposed to no taxes when they were in Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. So there's so much that went on. It's crazy how this fight, fingers crossed because we still got the early weigh-ins, but it's crazy how this card hasn't fallen apart, but there's been so much drama because they've had to move the event from Las Vegas to California. They showed us in the embedded episode that Dana White was talking to Gustafsson when the news was broken to him, and he still wanted to take the fight. And I have a lot of respect for Alexander Gustafsson because Dana White was talking about potentially moving the event, moving the fight to UFC 235 in Vegas or just another event in general, and Gustafsson said, I won the fight. And I don't blame him because at the end of the day, he's healthy, he's feeling great, Jones is here, he's healthy, he's feeling great. We don't often see these fights come to fruition without little problems. Look at Khabib and Tony Ferguson. There's always some sort of drama. We had Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. That was rebooked because obviously Holloway had health issues. We saw Edgar and Holloway didn't fall through. Like, so many times we see fights not falling to fruition because you never know with MMA. Something always happens. So now this is a much anticipated rematch for Alexander Gustafsson, 5 years in the making. The first time they fought, it was such a close fight. A lot of people thought that Gustafsson won the fight. He feels like he won the fight. And then he goes on and he ends up losing to Anthony Johnson by knockout in his hometown. The road back to Jon Jones, it never really happened because then Jones faced all these problems with the failed drug tests and all his issues outside of the octagon. Daniel Cormier comes in, he becomes champion. Gustafsson fights Cormier, loses a very close split decision. Another fight, another heartbreaking loss for Gustafsson. So you're talking about 5 years in the making. But for Gustafsson now, and he said it himself, this is more about beating Jones than becoming champion. That's how much it means to him. And this is 2 birds, 1 stone for him now. He gets to fight Jones and become champion. And for him, this fight means so much that this issue that comes out of nowhere, like you can't even imagine it, a picogram we're talking about, it comes out of nowhere and he's like, there's no way I'm not taking this fight. So I completely understand Gustafsson when he says that I won this fight. We're here. We're ready. We're a couple days away. Don't think any of them are going to have weight cut issues, so it's not one of those things. They're healthy. They've had the greatest camp they've ever had. It's finally here. 5 years in the making and so close. And then this issue comes up. You never know if you push it till March, what could happen. Somebody could get injured. There could be another issue with USADA, with Jon Jones, and then the fight might not happen, and he might not ever get that fight. Obviously, because you look at Jon Jones and all the issues he's had, and people are like, is he going to fight again? Another issue comes up, and people are like, should we believe Jon Jones? Now, of course, I had a lot of you ask me, like, what do I think? Do I think Jon Jones is a cheater? How could this possibly happen? Like, every single time there's something. And the way I'm looking at it is, and this is just my opinion, is obviously we've Tom Lawler, Frank Mir, Tim Means, they had similar issues, but obviously USADA didn't really give them the benefit of the doubt. They reduced the sentence, but they still had to serve time. Here, the picogram comes up, and they're saying, well, there is scientific proof that Jon Jones did not inject anything as of late, and this showed up in his system. But then an interesting thing that came up was that Jeff Nowitzki, when he came on Joe Rogan's podcast, and this was brought up in the press conference, but not really answered because they just kept saying, talk to Jeff Nowitzki, was that this picogram has popped up in Jon Jones's tests back in August. Now the question is, if this picogram popped up back in August, how didn't they solve the problem back then? And why did they go ahead and make this fight if there's an issue in general? Why didn't it come to light? Why are we talking about this a couple of days before the event? It's madness. And that's what people were trying to ask Dana and Jon Jones in the press conference. We didn't really get an answer. And when they asked Dana, did you know about this? Did you know that this picogram didn't just pop up a couple of days ago, but it actually popped up in tests that Jon Jones, because Jon Jones has been tested like 8 times, I think, in the recent time, and they're saying it popped up in August. So if it popped up in August, how could you go ahead and book this fight if there's an issue? Like, how can you not solve the issue? How did the issue not come to light? And why didn't all of this drama or addressing the issue or saying that, you know what, he couldn't have possibly injected, why didn't all of this happen before they booked the fight? Why is it happening after the fight is booked? And obviously, like, in the UFC standpoint, I get it. They're under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of money that was put into this event. They're going to do what they have to do as a business. And that's understandable. Because at the end of the day, if USADA gave them the green light, they're going to go ahead and do everything possible to keep this event alive. At the end of the day, there are pay-per-view buys. There's money to be made. There are a ton of other fighters on this card. Obviously, it wasn't convenient for them to move it from Vegas to California. But we're here now. The fighters, from what I'm aware of, I think most of them have probably made their way to California already, if not today. So it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy. And I just feel like because, well, I personally am not an expert when it comes to the scientific stuff. There are a lot of people who aren't experts. You have a lot of people popping up and giving their explanations, which is great because they're clarifying the situation more. But I don't think anybody really understands what's going on because at the end of the day, in my opinion, this could be superstar treatment for Jon Jones because maybe, and Jon Jones was saying that this is going to help fighters in the future. That if obviously with Jon Jones, it's so much bigger because he's a controversial figure. He's had a lot of problems in his past, and at the end of the day, he's a former champion. Some consider him the greatest of all time. Never really lost a fight. Got the belt taken away, obviously, because of the failed drug test and his mishaps outside of the octagon. But the idea is, obviously, this is being addressed a lot more by the media, by the fans, just because it's Jon Jones. People did pay attention when it was Frank Mir, and when it was Tom Lawler, when it was Tim Means, but obviously not this magnitude. And I think if USADA, from here on out, anytime a fighter has this issue and it's a picogram or they could scientifically prove that they didn't take anything as of late, and they give these fighters the same leeway that they gave Jon Jones, then maybe we can look back and be like, you know what? Maybe in actual fact, he's helped people. But of course, that's not the way people are going to look at it. They're going to be like, it's superstar treatment. I do believe, yes, possibly because of the magnitude of the event. It's a massive event. Jon Jones coming back, big pay-per-view. Everything was put together, and in the last second, this shows up. Do I believe that it is potentially superstar treatment for Jones? Maybe. Sure, I believe that it could be that. But then again, like I said, if down the line, for any fighter, even if it's a newcomer, somebody who's just fought in the UFC once, whatever it may be, if they get the same treatment from here on out, if this is Jon Jones, if Jon Jones's case is going to help people from here on out, I think maybe down the line people could look back and be like, you know what? Maybe because he's a superstar and they treated this differently, that now USADA are going to be a bit more careful or lenient towards people that have taken tainted supplements or people that picograms of whatever they have taken have shown up. Now they're not going to suspend them at all because maybe they already served their time and they've injected it ages ago or whatnot. So that's the real question in my opinion. Obviously, a lot of people don't buy it. They believe that Dana and that the UFC are giving Jon Jones leeway, but then again, the UFC can't do anything without the green light from USADA. And Jeff Nowitzki actually works with the UFC. He's with USADA, he's with the UFC. So just a couple of quotes that I wanted to pull up here. August 9th, and this is from Sean Al-Shati from MMA Fighting. He's quoting that Jeff Nowitzki tells Joe Rogan, this is on Joe Rogan's podcast, that USADA first noticed adverse findings August 9th, negative, August 29th, 8 picograms, September 18th, 19 picograms, September 21st, October 2nd, October 11th, November 14th, all negative. So they're talking about these picograms showing up all the way back to August 9th. So this is the question everybody has, like, why was this not addressed before? Why a few days? With all the pressure, with the event coming up, all the fighters already ready, they're days away from the title fight, why is this coming up now and being solved now? Obviously the venue change, all of that caused so much stress for everybody involved. So that's the real question. Why, if it appeared, on August 29th, 8 picograms, if that was the first time it appeared, why was it not addressed then? That's kind of the question that everybody has. And then Jeff, again, this is from Sean Al-Shati from MMA Fighting. He's quoting Jeff Nowitzki telling Joe Rogan that the UFC just renewed a contract with USADA and drug testing will increase by 30 to 40% in 2019. Now, while that sounds great because everyone's going to be like, well, we don't want anybody cheating, that means that's 30 to 40% more problems that we're going to have because, like I said, are USADA going to give whoever pops for whatever leeway if it's just a picogram? Are we going to see the same treatment that Jon Jones got? Are we going to have cases where we're going to be like, this came up, all right, let's talk about somebody who popped before. If something comes up in their system later, are they going to give them that leeway and be like, all right, scientifically, no way they've taken it. It's from the previous failed drug test. They fight. Are we going to see that from here on out? That's the question. And looking back, if this is what they're going to do moving forward, looking back, I think people are going to look at the Jon Jones situation. They're going to understand it a little bit more. But as of now, of course, people, with everything that Jon Jones has popped, like all the problems Jon Jones has had with USADA, popping multiple times, it's hard to give him the benefit of the doubt. And he was telling Gustafsson in the press conference, do you really think that picogram is what made me win all these fights, what made me beat you and whatnot? It was a nice back and forth between the two of them. I think it was inevitable that Jones was going to get asked all these questions. And these are a couple quotes that I'm going to get from Andy Foster. He was saying at some point somebody has to stand up and do the right thing. I'm quoting here. I have a lab that says there's no evidence of a new injection. There's no short-term metabolite in his system. It's the same old crap he's already ingested. I can only go by what scientists tell me, and I have multiple who are telling me there's no new injection. He has very, very low levels in his system. And then he goes on to say, is this fighter hot right now? No, he's a clean fighter, and he's been punished already for those metabolites before. He's cleared to fight here. He doesn't have any active steroids in him. And just another thing, when people are asking why California and not Vegas, for those who aren't following up with every little detail. The reason it was California, not Vegas, is because they said that the commission in Vegas, because it was Christmas time, Christmas Eve and all that, they were on holiday. And by the time they come back and deal with the issue, the fight is on the 29th. So they moved it to California. And Andy Foster's already dealt with Jones before because he fought Daniel Cormier in California. So he's already aware of everything that's happened to John Jones before. And that was, according to them, the reason why it was been able to move to California, and Vegas didn't have time to deal with the issue. So that's why it's been moved to California. Just to quote a couple more people, because I'd rather kind of sports stuff. This is Tim Means coming up today and saying, USADA found Austrian in my supplement. USADA tested a new bottle of creatine I was taking and found it. In my arbitration hearing, they told me the amount in my system didn't benefit me athletically, but was still a banned substance. They also told me I was responsible for what was in my system, even though it wasn't listed on the label. I settled for 6 months and took that long to finish investigation. 200,000 lost. Guess the rules have changed. This is Tim Means talking about initially getting a 2-year suspension for them finding Austrian in his supplement. He didn't know about it. And they told him the amount in his system didn't benefit him athletically, but told him it was still a banned substance. So that's the kind of the double standard that everybody's talking about. There are a couple of examples: Tom Lawler, Frank Mir, maybe a couple more that I haven't mentioned. So that's, and here's Tom Lawler saying 17 picograms of Austrian got me 2 years. That's kind of what everybody's talking about. But all that USADA and John Jones and drug tests and all that aside, I just want to talk a little bit about the fight. Obviously, it's a phenomenal fight. I think the big topic has become USADA and John Jones, and with the reason. We understand how this sport works. It is something to talk about. It isn't something to ignore. So it sucks for Alexander Gustafsson. I mean, I feel like he's a big loser in all of this in the sense that there's so much that going on with this fight for him. You know, the rematch, 5 years in the making, getting another shot at a title, getting another shot to fight John Jones, and now this is all we're talking about. But he is involved in this. Of course he is, because his opinion matters. And you know what? He decided to take the fight, and he's a phenomenal fighter, and he's awesome for taking this fight. And if I were in his shoes, I would do the same, and I completely understand why he took this fight. And it's gonna happen. You know, fingers crossed nothing happens in the early weigh-ins, and all the problems are solved. And if I could just break down the fight real quick. When you look at the first fight, super close. Gustafsson kind of had the momentum in the early rounds. Last 2 rounds, you know, when John Jones hit the spinning back elbow, he hurt Gustafsson. And in the championship rounds, that's when Jones reigned supreme. Some people look at it 3-2 Gus, 3-2 Jones, whatever they look at it. It was a close fight. Gus was doing well. You know, Jones was throwing a lot of low kicks. Gustafsson surprised everybody by taking Jones down. He wasn't able to keep him down. You could hear John Jones' corner calling for the takedown multiple times. You know, Gustafsson stuffed like the first 5. He stuffed a lot of John Jones' takedowns. So takedowns didn't really play a factor. It was a striking battle. Jones throws a lot of kicks, a lot of spinning attacks. Gustafsson was doing a lot of circling, so he'd kind of like in and out, and he'd circle and he'd kind of run away, and that helped him stuff the takedowns. Gustafsson's corner was pushing him to pressure as well, like pressure, don't let him off the hook. That could have gotten Gustafsson a little bit tired because we saw in the championship round, but at the same time, he did get hurt from that spinning back elbow that Jones landed in the 4th round. So I feel in the championship rounds, we saw the toughness of Jones. We saw the toughness of Gustafsson as well, because obviously he weathered the storm. But the championship rounds were pivotal for John Jones. It left a good lasting impression, and he defended his title. It was a very close fight. I don't have a problem with it going to Jones, the first fight. I see why it could be John Jones, but I think the whole idea of the first fight was that Jones was untouchable, and Gustafsson gave him everything he could handle, and Jones may have underestimated him or not expected Gustafsson to have been this good and this effective with his game plan. And you could tell the commentary with Joe Rogan, like he was getting so excited, like, oh my goodness, can you believe it that Jones isn't able to take Gustafsson down? And when Gustafsson would land, it was like, oh my goodness as well, because at that point, John Jones was untouchable. Now we're going to look at this differently. Obviously, the judges don't hear the commentary like we do, But the commentary could often sway us to think a certain way. But yeah, I think the narrative of the first fight was that Jones was untouchable and Gustafsson was a big underdog and nobody expected him to do anything, and instead he comes out and he lands effective strikes, he takes him down. So I think everybody was thrown back by everything Gustafsson was able to do. In rematch, both of them have been out of action for a while. Actually, it's a longer layoff for Gustafsson than it is for Jones, which is crazy. Gustafsson last fought when he beat Teixeira in May. Fantastic combination of the uppercuts and finally knocking him out. Jones hasn't fought since Daniel Cormier, July of 2017, so he's actually fought more recently, which is crazy. So both have been rather inactive, but both seem extremely ready. Obviously, Jones has had a lot to deal with outside of the octagon, so you wonder if that's affected him mentally. But then again, he came after dealing with all that outside of the octagon. He fought Daniel Cormier and had a fantastic performance, so I don't think that he's kind of used to it. All the problems he's had outside of the octagon, we saw that it didn't affect him mentally in the fight, and I don't think it's going to affect him this time. We did see Jon Jones fired up in the press conference. You know, Gustafsson was getting under his skin a little bit. Could be a good thing for Jones, could be a bad thing, we don't know, but there is a little bit of emotion. And Gustafsson's a nice guy. He's not kind of the guy that will ruffle your feathers, but the whole USADA thing, because you can imagine that Jones has been dealing with so much. He's got his management and the UFC. He's kind of being advised to not necessarily speak his mind, because sometimes in these cases, the more you talk, potentially the worse it can get. So obviously you saw in the press conference when he was getting grilled with specifics when the past of Frank Mir and Tom Lawler was brought up, Dana was like, Jeff Nowitzki will answer that, and Jones was going to answer, but then he's like, you know what, I'm going to take the advice of my boss, and when he means Dana White, and I'll let Jeff Nowitzki answer, because he realizes that at this point, I don't think anything he can say. He was saying it was just a picogram, or a pictogram, like he was calling it, but picogram. He was mentioning that time and time again. But now the fight's a couple days away. Problem solved. People aren't happy about it. More people will probably tune in. You have a lot of people who be like, the UFC is nonsense. Boycott this, boycott that. At the end of the day, there are a lot of people who are excited to see Jon Jones fight. There are a lot of people who hate Jon Jones and want to see him get beat. There are a lot of people who want Gustafsson to smash him. Everybody's talking about this. And because you're involved, Lance Armstrong is coming in and weighing in as well. You've got a lot of outside views coming into this. And anytime, it's the same thing when you look back at the Khabib-Conor brawl. Everyone's like, the fight, the bus incident, the dolly, and then the brawl after. All of this is more eyes. Is it negative towards the sport? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's like this stuff is forgotten because the next problem that comes up, people will talk about that. And at the end of the day, it's more eyes. So, yeah, the UFC could be bothered by this. Jones could be bothered. Gustafsson could be bothered. But it's more money in everybody's pocket. And I do believe they'll get more pay-per-view buys out of this. It sucks, of course, for all the fans that flew in, especially to Vegas. Media members, fans, family members or whatnot. For the fighters that have to pay California taxes. It sucks for all these people, for sure. But in terms of people ordering the pay-per-view online, and that's where the money comes in, other than the ticket sales, of course. But now you've got Cali residents that can now go to the fights. But for all the people that were going to order the pay-per-view, I don't think people are going to not order the pay-per-view anymore because of what happened. If they were going to buy the fight in the first place, they're still going to buy the fight. And I feel like potentially more people are going to buy the fight now because of all the drama and whether they want to see Jones lose, whether they do believe it's just a picogram and that Jones is innocent, whatever it is, it's just more eyes to the sport. I'll be interested to see what the pay-per-view numbers will be. I don't think we're cracking 1 million or anything like that. It's a fantastic card, and it's unfortunate for all the other fighters on the card. Chad Mendes is fighting Alexander Volkanovski. That's a great fight. We got Condit and Michael Chiesa. Megan Anderson is fighting Kat Zingano. You've got so many good fights on this card, and of course, nobody's talking about them because there's so much drama. Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes, that's a super fight. That's a fantastic fight. If you look at the most well-rounded female fighters, it's them. It's those two. And especially now with Ronda out of the sport and Amanda Nunes beating her the way she did. She beat Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate, who are the two biggest names in women's MMA. She beat them both. and she just defended her title against Raquel Pennington. She beat Valentina Shevchenko. Some people saw it controversial, but she's 2-0 up against Valentina Shevchenko, who's a flyweight champion now, who people highly regard as one of the best female fighters right now, or maybe down the line of all time. So that's a phenomenal fight in its own right. You've got Cyborg and Amanda, two very well-rounded fighters. Amanda Nunes used to fight a featherweight back in the day, so people, and me too, hands down the toughest challenge of Cyborg's career is Amanda, just because of how well-rounded she is, how experienced she is, and the fact that she used to fight at 45, so she's not particularly small or anything like that. And just the skill set, the mindset, the championship mindset, the experience, going 5 rounds, the cardio, the striking. I can expect Amanda Nunes to come out and really push the pace, because people have this idea that Cyborg carries a lot of muscle, she'll get tired. And that's what Amanda will look to do. Really pressure her, in my opinion. Really pressure her and try to get her tired. Try to push her into the later rounds and hopefully find success there. Maybe even try to take her down. If she can push her and get her tired, the takedowns will come easier. That's what Amanda feels like she'll have. She feels like she'll have the speed advantage. Cyborg is a pressure fighter too. That's what she does. Very powerful hands. Can knock out anybody. So I do believe we're going to have two fighters meet in the middle and try to push that pace. It'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. You know, Cyborg is a favorite. A lot of people feel like she'll have the size and the strength advantage, and that Amanda's not going to be able to land anything effective or really be able to handle Cyborg's power. But it's such a phenomenal fight as well. It's as high level as you can get for women's martial arts, just like we saw with Valentina and Joanna. That was another very high level fight. So this is going to be a phenomenal fight as well. All right, I'm going to answer a few fan questions, and I appreciate those who sent them through. So I'm going to answer a few of them now. This is a question: what's the future of the women's 145 division? The only possible fighter that might impose a threat along the horizon for Cyborg is Kayla Harrison. That's a good point. You know, Ali Abdelaziz, who manages Kayla Harrison, who's fights for the PFL, and she's fighting for the $1 million, actually, is Saturday. This Saturday on the 31st. Yeah, you know, she's actually a legitimate, like, heavier fighter. Like, she's not somebody that is a natural 35er that's pushing herself to fight at higher weight classes. She actually would have the size to fight Chris Cyborg. And should Cyborg beat Amanda Nunes, you know, Kayla Harrison's still young in her career. I do believe that she's going to need a few more fights, but sometimes when somebody has a name, if somebody's dominating, if she wins the $1 million, obviously the format that PFL have, giving these fighters the opportunity to win such big money, it's going to get press. Judo Olympian, sure, she's definitely a name, but she's got to keep winning. Does she need to win like 10 fights? Probably not. You know, it's all about making the big fights, and if she can continue to win in dominant fashion and Cyborg beats Amanda, I could see her, as her manager Ali predicted, that at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, she'll fight Cyborg. We'll see. But as of now, I mean, the surprise for everybody was that we had an Ultimate Fighter for 145-pound women that Macy Chiasson won, and she's dropping down to 35 now. And nobody understands that. She's fighting Gina Mazzani, and a lot of people are like, what was the point of the season then? A lot of people are outraged. What was the point of the season if the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, 145-pound Ultimate Fighter, is moving down to 35? So I can understand why the people think that the 45-pound division for women is groggy right now. You've got Megan Anderson, who's a natural 145-pounder. She's got to fight. She just lost to Holly Holm, so she's got to fight against Kat Zingano. Should she win that, there aren't that many girls. You know, Megan's got a name. She's a popular name. She's a really good fighter, a natural 145er. So she can go out there and beat Zingano convincingly. That could be the next challenger for Cyborg Nunes. For Zingano, she should stick around at 45. If she beats Megan convincingly, she has a win over Amanda Nunes, who's now challenging for the 45 title. So I think that fight, you can't sit and wait for Kayla Harrison and hope that she wins. If you want a big fight a big name fight. Because Amanda Nunes and Cyborg have a name as well, I think the winner of Megan and Zingano could be next in line. Should Zingano win, if she gets an opportunity to fight for the 45 title, of course she'll take it. Because at 35, she isn't exactly like one fight away from a title shot or anything like that. But she does hold a win over Amanda Nunes, which was MMA math, but it always works or oftentimes, I won't say it always works, but because you've got Rafael Assunção, he has a win over TJ, and he's trying to get that third fight, but that will definitely help her case. So I do see the winner of Megan and Zingano being next in line. We'll see about that. With Holly Holm now fighting her next fight at 35, so against Aspen Ladd. So with the 45 division, I don't think there are that many rules. It's just whoever's there, whoever's available. And when you got girls like Megan and Zingano who have a name, I believe they'll be next in line. All right, let's move along to the next question. That is not a question, all right? All right, it's a bit brief. Are you excited for Whittaker Gastelum? Sure, that's a fantastic fight. I am very excited for Whittaker Gastelum. I don't want to go too off topic, but all right, I'll have a few words since I asked you guys to ask the questions. Whittaker Gastelum, of course, it's a fantastic fight. You know, Gastelum's a phenomenal boxer, and that's what I feel will be a key. You know, Whittaker, great striker, very versatile striker. He's got his kicks, very fast, in and out movement, phenomenal takedown defense. So should Gastelum try to take the fight to the ground, I think he's going to have a little bit of a problem because Whittaker's movement and his takedown defense is great. He's got a great chin as well, Whittaker. We saw how much damage he took against Romero in those two fights that he fought, and that will be interesting. Does he have the cardio? Yes, he does have the cardio. He's proven it. Gastelum's got an iron chin, and he's got the cardio too. So I do see this fight primarily being on the feet. And Gastelum's a very underrated boxer, and he's a fantastic boxer. So it'll definitely be a very interesting fight. Whittaker does tend to keep his hands down a little bit. It's part of his movement. I'm not going to say it's something wrong that he does because he's been so successful, but that will be interesting to see how he approaches this fight stylistically with his striking. But I do believe Whittaker's a more versatile striker. Both have got power. I do believe we'll probably see a finish. I don't see it going to 5 rounds. I do believe with the pressure that these guys put, that we'll see a finish. So I love this fight, and fingers crossed it stays intact. Hope that answers your question. Let's move to a couple more. All right, that was a venue question. Do you think if Gus wins, an immediate rematch for Jones and him? Good question. I think that heavily relies on what DC does next. Because for Jones, I don't think anybody in the light heavyweight division interests him. Should he beat Gustafsson, I don't think anybody in the division interests him. Would he rematch Gustafsson? That would be a third fight. He'd be up 2-0 again. Oh, sorry. The question was if Gus wins. Excuse me. Yes, back to that. Obviously, if Jones wins, that'll be 2-0. I don't think that happens. If Gus wins, will Jones want that back? Sure. Because will Gus want to fight him for a third time? That depends. Again, for me, DC is the factor. If DC comes in and if Gus beats Jones and DC comes into the picture and shows interest, I'm sure Gus wants that one back. It was so close. It was a split decision. So if DC enters the picture, of course, Gustafsson will become a lot more interesting to DC if Gustafsson beats Jones. Because then you go to MMA math and you'll be like, all right, DC lost to Jones, but Gustafsson beat Jones and DC beat Gus. So Gus and DC are going to have to fight. So I think it'll depend what DC does. If he stays at heavyweight and gets that Brock fight, of course we know, DC's fought everybody. He's done everything. He deserves that money fight against Brock. But now Brock re-signing with WWE, we don't know. I do believe if Gus beats Jones, that a fight with Gus might be more intriguing for DC than potentially a rematch with Miocic, who he beat by first round knockout. So I think, to answer your question, if Gus wins, would it be an immediate rematch for Jones? I think it all depends on how DC enters the picture. That's just my opinion. What entices Gus and what entices DC. All right. I'm going to go for one more, just so I don't make this video too long. Does BJ Penn have a chance, or should he have stayed retired? Is he hurting his legacy? You know what? It's really, 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 really hard to see BJ fight. It really is. Because I watched a lot of BJ's fights in his prime. I was fortunate enough. And even if you look back at his fights, it's hard. It was hard to see him against Frankie Edgar. It was hard to see him against Yair Rodriguez. We all know what a killer BJ Penn was in his prime. When GSP's asked, he says BJ Penn is the greatest. You know, he was such a phenomenal fighter. To see him now, it's hard to explain his reasoning as to why he's still fighting. Stylistically, fighting Ryan Hall, who's not a guy, he's unorthodox with his striking. He threw a lot of kicks when he fought, was it Gray Maynard, I believe. So we all know that Ryan Hall is a jiu-jitsu wizard. So I believe he can submit anybody. I do believe with BJ Penn, of course, he's lost more of his striking than he will have his ground game. And he's got a great ground game as well. So stylistically, I guess that's the better matchup he could have gotten, rather than have a dynamic striker like Yair or somebody like Frankie who moves in and out and boxes so well. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to see him fight. I really hope he does well. It's not about wishing for him to win. I want I'm not going to pick sides. I don't usually give picks on who I want to win. But I really hope BJ doesn't take damage and looks good, looks competitive. That's all I'm going to wish. I'd rather not see him fight, but you can't keep a fighter from fighting. If they want to fight, they want to fight, but I'd rather he didn't. There was a second part to your question. Should they have given Megan Anderson easier fights? Maybe like one of the girls from the past Ultimate Fighter. I'm assuming you're saying that so they could build her up, since she's a natural 145er. I'm okay with this Kat Zingano fight. I am. Because if Kat wins, the UFC wins out of that situation as well. Because like I said, she's got a win over Amanda Nunes, who's fighting Cyborg for the title. Should Amanda win, I guess there's a story there. Should Cyborg win, has Kat Zingano earned a title shot? The 45 division is new. There is no earning at this point, because there isn't really a division. If you look at the girls in the Ultimate Fighter and give them a title shot against Cyborg, especially the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, Macy's, moving down to 35. So if you go ahead and give it to any of the other girls that were in the season, people will be outraged as to why that fight is happening. They're going to be like, the girls didn't even win this season. But at least Kat Zingano has a name and she's got a resume behind her. So I think people, and she's got a big fan base as well. So with the Megan and Kat Zingano fight, I think it's a bit of considering the muddy waters at 145 and the lack of challenges and challengers, which is why we're seeing a super fight. I believe it's not actually a bad fight between Kat and Megan. I think it makes sense. They both have a name, they both have a resume, and then I think the winner of that should get the winner of Cyborg and Nunes. All right, I hope that answers some of your questions. Thank you to everybody who's listened. Of course, UFC 232 goes down Saturday, December 29th in the Forum in Inglewood, California, not Las Vegas. Headlined by John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson 2 for the vacant light heavyweight championship. And Chris Cyborg will defend her featherweight title when she takes on Amanda Nunes. Fantastic fight. Fantastic fights. Fantastic cards. Top to bottom. Thank you guys for listening. And hopefully I'll do some reaction video for after the fights. Alright?